Hey, good morning, everybody. Let's get started. We're glad that you're here today. That's probably good. I hate to interrupt the good talking and fellowship, but we're going to get to our class. We're going to be studying a story in John chapter 11 today. If you've got your Bible, your phone app, whatever you want to use, we're going to eventually we're going to get to John 11. We're going to continue this week and next week what we've been calling our story series, and we'll wrap it up next Sunday on Easter Sunday. Easter's really early this year, but we'll wrap that up next week, and then the following week on April 7th. Don't forget, we're going to have a combined service that day. One service at 9:30 on April 7th, and then right after the service, we're going to go out to the grassy knoll, and thank you, Kelly, for smiling at that, and have barbecue sandwiches together. So no classes that day, one service, lunch. You don't have to do or bring anything. You just show up, all right? That's pretty good. You can't beat that. There's no need to go to Wendy's. Just walk out there and get lunch together. All right, but that's in 2 weeks. We're going to study today. This started back in January, on January the 7th. We've just been kind of bouncing around with some different topics, but all under the heading of what's our story. We talked about how people's stories are important. And we've also talked about how stories about Jesus are important. That very first week, and if you want to turn to Acts chapter 1, you can. I just want to read a couple of verses. But that very first week, back in January, we read some verses in Acts 1 when Jesus was with his followers. Acts 1 verse 4, it said, "Once he was eating with them, he commanded them, 'Do not leave Jerusalem until the Father sends you the gift he promised, as I told you before. John baptized with water, but just in a few days you will be baptized with the Holy Spirit.' So when the apostles were with Jesus, they kept asking him, 'Lord, has the time come for you to free Israel and restore our kingdom?' He replied, 'The Father alone has the authority to set those dates and times, and they're not for you to follow.'" And here's the verse. Here's the verse that we kind of kicked this study off with 3 months ago. "But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you." And then this phrase, "and you will be my witnesses, telling people about me everywhere, in Jerusalem, throughout Judea, in Samaria, and to the ends of the earth." We really focused on that little phrase for the first couple of weeks. Talked about a lot of things, but we kept going back to how we were called to be a witness. We're all called to be a witness for Jesus, right? We agree with that. And so we ask this question, how do you witness? And these are just some things we said. We said it's you can witness by the way you live. We call that your life story. All right? And we also said you can witness by stories you share, things you actually say. All right? And we emphasize this week after week after week, that we all have a story to tell. Everybody has a story to tell. Now, I'm going to do something a little different, okay? Today, I made notes so I don't get messed up. I don't want to be controversial, right? But I talk to a lot of people during the week, all right? For those of you that may be visiting or don't know, I worked here 27 years. And so my office is over in the front of the gym, and I see a lot of folks. A lot of folks come in and out of the Rock during that's what we call the gym, the Recreation Outreach Center. And I see all kinds of people from the community, from other churches, our church members. They come in and out. And this is what I want to say. Y'all promise that you'll stay with me for the next 35 minutes. You're going to stay with me? All right? What I'm about to say, I'm not trying to be negative, but I felt like this. Gino said, what are you going to talk about class today? And it's like, if it's like Wednesday and I don't know, I'm getting worried. Because usually I already know. But I just couldn't get it to seem to gel. And then there's been some things, different people I know that have had some struggles. And I thought, and I started reading in John. I got to chapter 11, and this is where it came out. All right? So this is what you're going to get today. A lot of people have struggles. Is that okay to say out loud? Sometimes we don't want to say that maybe in church. We kind of get dressed up and we come here and we want to look good and act good. And it's like the only day of the week I tuck my shirt in. And sometimes if I wear the right jacket or vest, I can keep from tucking it in. Well, Dr. Freeman, that was a joke about tucking my shirt in. Nobody laughed. Here's what I got to thinking about when I was reading John 11, and I'm reading the funeral scene with Lazarus. And that's what we're going to study today. A lot of people may not be in a place where they feel like witnessing. Is that okay to say? They may be going through something or struggling with something. And so I wanted us to talk about that today. I want us to be real and be honest, and acknowledge the fact that maybe there's something going on in our lives, and it's okay to take just a little bit and work on ourselves too. Is that okay? That sometimes we need to do a few things for ourselves in order to get ourselves mentally and spiritually ready to witness. Y'all kind of see where I'm going here? Because we're going to go to a funeral here in a minute. And funerals aren't always the happiest of places, right? I sent some messages out to some of our classmates this week, and what do you think about this funeral scene? Tell me what you think about the funeral scene in John 11. And one lady sent me this. I'm going to read just a couple of things written by one of your classmates here from our class. This lady wrote, 2 sisters who just lost their brother. We have no indication that either sister was married. What were they to do now that the male leader, the breadwinner and protector of their home, was dead? How would they survive? Martha seems pretty smart. She'll figure out some way to get some money and keep the family alive. Mary, a dreamer, always in her thoughts, not sure what she'll be good for. Didn't Jesus know Lazarus had been ill? Didn't he get the word? What was he waiting for? Maybe they didn't tell him how bad it was. Maybe the seriousness of the situation wasn't conveyed properly. Martha knows she should have just gone and found him herself. He would have come if I'd gone and gotten him. But here they all are, alone, sad, scared, disappointed, hurt. They did hear that he was finally coming, a little too late. Guess he wants to pay his final respects, as well he should. Lazarus and Jesus were good friends. Have you ever had so much faith in someone that you just refused to believe that they would let you down? I think that's how Martha felt. Somehow she refused to believe that this was the end of the story. What could be done? Not sure, but surely Jesus could help somehow. I thought that was pretty strong, written by somebody from our class. Amen. Right here to share that. So I want to talk about two things, all right? Two stories, because we're talking about our story series. Here's the first one. If you'll go to John 11, verse 1. I'm going to call this the friend story. And then the last one we're going to call the 4-day story. So the friend story is this. I just started in the first couple of chapters of John, and when I got to 11, that's where I felt like we were going to be today. A man named Lazarus was sick. That's John 11, verse 1. He lived in Bethany with his sisters, Mary and Martha. This is the same Mary who later poured the expensive perfume on the Lord's feet and wiped them with her hair. Her brother Lazarus was sick. So the two sisters sent a message to Jesus telling him, "Lord, your dear friend is very sick." But when Jesus heard about it, he said, "Lazarus' sickness will not end in death. No, it happened for the glory of God, so that the Son of God will receive glory from this." So although Jesus loved Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, he stayed where he was for the next 2 days. Finally, he said to his disciples, "Let's go back to Judea." Here's the first story, and it's only going to focus on a couple of words from this passage. The sisters sent a message to Jesus saying, "Lord," who was sick? How did he describe him? Dear friend. Lord, your dear friend. This family is very close to Jesus. Okay? The sisters send the message, your dear friend is sick. I want to just point, I want you to let your mind, I always say, I just try to get you to think. Okay? What a way to be described. Lazarus was a dear friend of Jesus. Jesus loved them, and y'all, he loves everybody, all right? But apparently there is a special bond here. And so as I read that part, and I thought this isn't enough to take up 40 minutes, but I felt like we had to point this out. I got to thinking, I wonder if somebody would ever refer to me that way. Man, that guy is a dear friend of Jesus. You're like, wait, Martha, this is talking about 2,000 years ago and they hung out. No, listen, you can still be a dear friend of Jesus today, right? Because here's what I'm afraid. This is just me. I'm not going to talk about y'all, all right? I'm going to talk about me. I'm afraid sometimes they may say, man, well, you know, Mark, I mean, he spends a lot of time on social media. He can really write some good posts on Facebook. I mean, you know, Mark, he likes to read books about all kind of things. You know, Mark, he likes his 80s music. When he walks on the track at night out here when nobody's around. Man, you know, Mark, he can tell you all kind of stuff about the SEC football. Maybe this one isn't me. Maybe this might be one of y'all. You know, man, if you want a shopping bargain, they can find it. Are you getting what I'm trying to say? When somebody says, man, do you know Jay? You know Tim? What were they going to say? Because for Lazarus, he was a dear friend of Jesus. Amen. And so I got to thinking, isn't that what we should be striving for people to say about us? Amen. Man, you know Greg. You know what I saw him do the other day and how he acted? And I can tell he is a friend of Jesus. Do you get it? I think about it a lot. I've heard Frank do dozens and dozens of funerals in the 18, almost 19 years he's been here. And they're great because he can tell a story and make you feel like you know the person, if you didn't know him. You know him when the funeral's over. But more than anything, you'll hear stories told, and we laugh and we tell jokes, and people say Roll Tide and War Eagle, and they love Mustangs and Corvettes. And I know but more than not, where do you go? You go to, man, this person was a friend of Jesus. Isn't that what you want to hear at the end? Lazarus is at the end. And there's probably a lot of things Mary and Martha could have sent to Jesus because they're dear friends. And remember that time we did this, and remember that time we did that and hung out, and you told that story, or we went in that boat. Your dear friend is sick. He's a friend. So, when they're writing your witness story, Acts 1, verse 8, what are they going to say about you? I hope for me, at the end, it would be, man, you know, Mark, there's a lot of stuff, but he was a friend of Jesus. That's the friend story from John chapter 11. The next one is, to me, is a hard one. Okay, this is a hard one, but I don't want us to back away from this. So look at verse 17, all right? John 11, hope you got a Bible. John 11, verse 17. When Jesus arrived at Bethany, he was told that Lazarus, here's our phrase, had already been in the grave for 4 days. It goes on to tell how far Bethany was from Jerusalem, how many people had come out to console Mary and Martha in their loss. I mean, this is a very familiar scene for us, right? Again, I'm not trying to be morbid. I'm not trying to make anybody sad, but this is a funeral scene. Verse 20, when Martha gets the word that Jesus is coming, she goes out to meet him. Mary stayed in the house. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had only been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus says, your brother will rise again. Yes, Martha said, he will rise when everyone else rises at the last day. Jesus told her, I am the resurrection and the life. That's a great phrase right there. Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. Our last story in our story series next week, of course, will be about the resurrection. That's what we'll talk about next week, and I'm not going to copy what Frank does. I'll try to do something different. Anyone who believes in me will live even after dying. So just make sure you get it. How long had Lazarus been in the grave? 40. All right, we got that? Look, I'm right so fancy on the board. This is going to be the 4-day story. This is what we're going to talk about. It's going to be a little different. Several years ago, I think back in 2019, we used a phrase from a T.D. Jakes sermon in here, but we said it over and over and over. We're not going to do that today. He said, behold, he stinketh. And he used the King James version of this later on in the story, but to remind how long he'd been in the grave before Jesus showed up. We're going to do a little different approach today, all right? We're going to talk about the 4-day story. This is going to be our version. Mary and Martha are sad that their brother's been gone. But listen, this is where this is going to kind of take a turn, I hope, for us. They're sad that their brother's gone, but they're sad because they didn't know why Jesus wasn't there. Did you see that? So, again, we're reading about Lazarus, we're reading John 11, but I need you to begin to put your story in here. There's pain in the loss, but there's even more pain when you begin to think that Jesus has forgotten about you, right? Oh, Mark, come on, let's just be honest. Can we just be honest in here? I know there's 124, 8, 31, I don't ever know, Mike, however many's in here. But sometimes it's like, oh, everything's great, everything's perfect. How are you? I'm wonderful. And you're not. Mary and Martha are not okay right now. Their brother died there in these first few verses, and Jesus wasn't there. Let's just be honest. In that moment, I realize how this ends. We know the ending. But in that moment, they're not okay. So there's pain in the loss, but even more pain when you think Jesus has, or when you feel alone. I listened to a podcast yesterday, and the guy talked about how that is one of the worst feelings that people have, is when they feel like they're alone. That loneliness is one of the worst things to experience. So, this is how we're going to make this personal, okay? What is your 4-day story? Now, we're not going to have you say it out loud. We're not going to embarrass anybody. But for Mary and Martha, this is their 4-day story. Y'all see what I'm saying? 4 days, Lazarus has been in the grave, and Jesus sitting there. They're mourning with the mourners. They're doing whatever they do in the Jewish culture. And so they're going through something. So my question for you, for all of us, for me, I've got a 4-day story. When I'm feeling down, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling like what's going on? Things aren't going the way I think they should. Can I give you some more examples? And if this is particular to you, I didn't mean for it to be. I just started typing on Thursday. A 4-day story is going to be different and feel different for everybody. It may be a loss of a loved one, just like this very story, or a friend. You may have just got that health news that you didn't want to get, that you were dreading, that you were worried about, you were concerned about. Maybe you put off going to the doctor because you knew something was wrong. Kids, man, we can talk about our kids. We have 4-day stories about our kids all the time. They're struggling at school, or they don't appreciate what they have, or you can't give them what they need, or they can't seem to connect with friends, or they're having boyfriend and girlfriend trouble, or their marriage is in a rough patch. I'm talking about our kids. Maybe they've gone down a bad path. Maybe there's drugs, there's alcohol. Would we agree, those of us that have kids, that sometimes we've been in some 4-day stories with our kids? Is it okay? I'm going to go like this. I was up at 2 a.m. because Sadie still hadn't got home from a concert yet. She's almost 22 years old. What am I? And I'm checking Life 360. Anyway, but that's what we do, right? We are concerned. It takes up our time. And somebody may be right now in the class thinking, 4 days? Psh, I've been a 4-week story, or a 4-month story, or a 4-year story. And I feel like I'm not getting out of it. I want to remind you that nobody has it all together. All right? We may act like it. We may put pictures of it on social media, right? Look, man, look at me. My shirt's tucked in on Sunday. Everything's good. Everybody's happy. Is it always real? Come on, somebody please tell me it's not always real. Thank you. Maybe your 4-day story is addiction issues for you. Maybe your 4-day story is the job isn't working out. Maybe the 4-day story is marriage problems or the divorce and the real serious pain that may come with the aftermath. Maybe the 4-day story is the money that's not there, or the aging parents, or the gossip that's gotten to be more than you can handle. The house, literally, I don't mean like literal things are falling off of your house and you can't seem to keep it together. Church isn't what you'd hoped. Whether it's the ministries, the worship, the leadership, It may have taken all some of you had within you to walk in the door today. Have you been there? Depression, anxiety. You just don't want to be around people. You're choosing isolation. And then you walk in here and Mark's up front going, Acts 1 verse 8, we need to witness about Jesus to everybody. And you're sitting there thinking, man, I don't know if I can make it to the car. Because you're in the middle of a 4-day story. Are you with me? Mary and Martha were not in a good place for those 4 days. Lord, if you had just been here. You can fill in your blank. Lord, if you'd have just been here, then this. Because, again, I'm so sorry. I see visitors in the class today, and you don't know me very well. I'm not trying to be doomy and gloomy, and I usually make jokes about Wendy's and Aerosmith and Disney, but I want us to be honest, because if we're going to challenge each other to be witnesses, we also need to challenge each other to help each other get better, right? If I want to challenge Tim to witness, then I need to make sure Tim's good. And what can I do to help Tim? That's part of it. It's not just witnessing to people who don't know about Jesus. It's helping people who have already found Jesus. It's connected. And sometimes we feel like he's not there. Mary and Martha are like, Jesus, where are you? Your best friend's sick. Where are you? We saw you heal all these other people. Where are you? Lord, if you'd have just been here. So here's what we're going to do. This is why this is a little different. I got another handout. I know, 2 weeks in a row, a handout. I'm sorry. But I'm going to give you real, tangible things that you can do. There's about 105 or 8 of these. I don't know how many I printed. Just may have to share with a neighbor, or you can have your own. But we're going to talk about some real, tangible things that we could try to do to be better in order to get to where we could witness, right? All right? So these are going to make their way around, and it's from 2 different articles, websites that I came across this week, because I wanted to leave you. You say, well, Mark, you said we're in our 4-day story, and we need to help each other get better. Well, how can we do that? All right, I'm going to tell you. It's going to be something different for everybody. Because maybe your personality isn't the kind of person that wants to do some of these things, but maybe there's something. Maybe there's one thing here that'll help you. Hey, and listen, if everything in your life is hunky-dory and a bed of roses and wonderful, and you got 11 weeks vacation and all the money you can ever spend, and everybody's healthy, and nobody you know has ever died, then that's great. So this class is not for you. All right? You're wonderful. But some of us have gone through some stuff. And we need to continue to encourage each other. Here's the thing. I don't want anybody to stay stuck in a 4-day story, right? That's not good. I'm acknowledging that it exists. I'm acknowledging that Mary and Martha were having some issues. They're questioning where was Jesus, but he didn't want them to stay there, right? We can't stay there. That's not good. So, all right. Have they made it around yet? Handouts, we good? Ralph, you got 2 or 3 back there? You need a crayon or a pen? Crayon. Okay, somebody get Ralph a crayon. Here comes Mike. He's getting you one. All right, here we go. We're going to go 2 different places. We're going to go what I'm going to call from more a secular article with some things that you might could do, and one go from the spiritual angle. You got it? So here's the first one. It came from an article from a website, Mental Health America. Here's how they suggest for some things you could do to get through a 4-day story. The first one they suggest is to write it out. I put a few blanks on there, hopefully to keep you from falling asleep. They suggest to write it out. That's never been, Gina has always been a journaler. Is that a word? Journaler? Karen, is that a word? Okay, good. No, she's not a journalist. I don't think so. She's got like 18 jobs. I can't keep up with what all she's doing. But she's not, but she has journaled. I don't do that. I'm beginning to think maybe I should try it. Set aside 15 minutes a day and write about, maybe if it's a particular event that's happened that you're struggling with, then it says just write about it. Write about how it made you feel. Don't worry about grammar. You don't have to worry that if your sister's master's degree and teaches English, you can just forget about her and write whatever kind of grammar you want, all right? And then try it. Hey, and it may be upsetting, but it could help you. It could help you to write some of it down. Again, this is just from a Mental Health America article. We're going to get to the spiritual disciplines at the bottom. The second one is tackle your problems. Again, it talks about list solutions, access the list. Hey, come up with some solutions. Pick one. Don't get. The thing is, if you just don't ever do anything, then it may not get better. That's what they're trying to say. The third one is shift your thinking. So we're going to write it out. We're going to tackle our problems. We're going to shift our thinking. This is a big one that I've done this with my kids. Ask yourself how realistic your worry is. I know some people worry more than others. That's not to diminish the worry. This article talked about how you could set aside worry time. I'm only going to worry for 15 minutes each day. From 7 to 7:15 is my worry time, and boy, I'm going to let it loose. I like this one, though. Focus on the good. Yeah, count your blessings. Focus on the good. Look at, now this, I know, right now, if you're in the middle of something, you're going to just go cram this piece of paper down my throat, all right? Look at tough times as an opportunity to learn. And that's so easy for me just to rattle that off until you're in the middle of something. Okay? I get it. I'm making sure you hear me. I get it. There have been things that have gone on in my 54 and a half years that I can look back on now and go, oh, okay, I see that now. I didn't see it, though, when I was in the middle of it. The last one is get support. Get support. Maybe you are just covered up with tasks at work or church, or maybe ask somebody to give you a hand. Don't be afraid to ask for advice. The article said, it said, hey, nobody knows everything. Ask for some help. Ask for some advice. And then the last one there, the last bullet point is get some emotional support. Somebody you trust and you're comfortable talking to. Now, again, that's what I say that came from let's just call it a secular article, all right? Now we're going to go to the article that was written more from a Christian perspective, all right? And these are things that you're familiar with, but when you're in the 4-day story, right? When you're in the middle of it and you're upset and you're worried and you're stressed and you're crying and I'm not discounting that. It's going to happen. What should you do to try to get better? Here's just some things, all right? Reading the Bible. Okay, you're like, I left some space there if you want to write any other notes or whatever. Man, I'm telling you, it's so important to take time and reflect and meditate on Scripture. Okay? I read through the first 10 or 11 chapters of the book of John this week, and that's just where I was. And there is a peace and a comfort sometime, especially reading some of those red letters. Things that Jesus said in the New Testament. You want to get to know God and His heart for you? Read the Bible. Does that mean that the pain's just going to, I read my Bible, I feel great? No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it could help get you through the 4-day story. These are things that can help. Back to journaling again. We've already talked about that. Write down your thoughts, your prayers. I do know from people that I have talked to that do journaling, and some of you maybe can attest to this, that it's sometimes faith building and encouraging to go back and look at those journals from years gone by and to see how God has showed up, as Howard Caperton says, showed up and showed out. When you look back at things you were writing about 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago in a journal and go, oh man, look what God has done. Journaling. Prayer, we've talked about prayer a lot in here. Frank's, is it today you're issuing the prayer challenge? We're going to have a prayer challenge today that he's going to give you. If you weren't at first service, you're going to hear it second service. Constantly praying, maybe periodically praying, it can help you maintain a relate. Like, I know y'all have heard this. This is silly to even say it, but I can't have a relationship with somebody if I never talk to them. Well, pray. God can take it. Y'all think there's anything he hadn't heard or hadn't seen or haven't experienced? Or just talk to him. Let him know what's going on. And here's another thing that might be a little bit of twist on this. When you're in a 4-day story, when you're feeling like things are just caving in on you, what if you twisted it just a little and you prayed for other people? And it might keep us aware of other people's needs or needs of the world. Again, I realize there may be a moment that you can't even fathom that because you're so deep in something. I'm not trying to pressure you to do something you don't want to do. I'm just saying it might help you get through what you're going through if you start praying for other people too. The next one, to me, some of these start kind of overlapping each other a little bit. This article called it a Sabbath, to literally mean to stop working. Rest from your work. I realize that's foreign to a lot of us. I mean, a day off for me is working in the yard. And I realize that's not really a day off. But that's just, I don't know, that's what I do. I pressure wash. I rake leaves. In a world, this article said this, in a world where staying busy is often seen as a virtue, Christians employing a culture of holy rest could sometimes even seem counterintuitive. But this guy says, hey, take a Sabbath. Now, to me, some of these, not this one, but solitude and silence. This one, he goes to fasting next. We've talked about fasting here before when we studied the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew chapter 6, it talks about prayer and giving and fasting. We spent some time there. And I know a lot of times we go to food, and that's fine. I think that's legitimate, but I do still believe what this guy said. He said many Christians have also opted to fast from anything that is often a distraction or consumes much of their time. I think he said like social media, sugar, or their phones. I don't know why he listed those three. And then you put God in that time. Every morning I'm going to read the paper for 20 minutes, and I'm going to do and every morning if you're in a bad mood, if you're going to do that, maybe you need to try to put God in that place. Give that up and put God in that place and just see what happens. That could be an example of fasting. Solitude, again, solitude, silence, these next two. Take time away from the busyness of life. See, here's what stinks. It's when you're in a 4-day story and you still got to go to work. Doesn't that stink? And you still got to be around people, and you still got to do your job, and you still got to meet your sales numbers, or you still got to be in a classroom with 20 kids, or you still got to. But you're like, man, I just want to crawl under a rock right now. There is some wisdom in some periods of solitude, okay? I'm not saying quit your job, right? But there is some wisdom. And the next one, how many of you can ride in your car for more than 3 minutes and not turn on a radio or a GPS or a podcast I do watch sports, but like there's times I'm home, I don't turn the TV on. Gina comes home and goes, it's so quiet here. And I'm like, It's great. It's great. It's so quiet. I love it. Sometimes silence with God, complete silence, and to see maybe where he's trying to navigate or push you. That can help you in a 4-day story. Last ones, this is a big one for me, okay? Service. Because you are solely focusing on the needs of somebody else. I'm going to say this, and I think it's true. When I'm helping somebody else, I'm busy, and you know what? I'm not thinking on my 4-day story. Did it go away? Is it any less hurtful? Is the pain completely gone? No. But it's something that God, when two folks come to the rock and want to wash clothes and take a shower because they're homeless, it's kind of hard for me to sit around and be worried about, something about my 1.5-year-old truck that's out in the parking lot. Are you with me? When there's somebody there just hadn't had the chance to wash clothes in a week and hadn't had a shower, it puts things in perspective when you go get that person a towel and some body wash and you have a 5-minute conversation with them. It's kind of like you go, oh, okay, I get it, God. I'm spoiled. Serving others sometimes helps you get out of your 4-day story. And the last thing is fellowship. We need community. I've heard people a lot of times say, I don't know how I would have gotten through that if it hadn't been for my church family. Have you heard people say that before? It's important. I mean, and it's family, right? Maybe you don't want to be around them all the time. That's okay. But you can't give up on Christian fellowship when you're in a 4-day story. And here's the last. We're done. We're out of time. And I made some notes at the bottom of this email that our classmate wrote us. I've got so many papers today. After 4 days, Jesus comes, and we know the rest of the story. What happens? He raises Lazarus from the dead. So here's what I'm about to say. Listen, don't get mad at me if you were thinking about not even walking in the door this morning because you were so hurt. But this is the point that we can't miss from this story. And let me tell you, I am talking to myself right now more than anybody. We can't give up on Jesus. Whatever your 4-day story is, you can't forget that he's still there for you.